folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. Research on vampires. Certain basic facts established. 1. Light. The vampire allergic to light. Never ventures forth in the daytime. Sunlight, fatal. Repeat, fatal. Would destroy them. 2. Garlic. The vampire repelled by odor of garlic. Memo. Check final arrangements with Harker before he leaves for Klausenberg. 3. The crucifix, symbolizing the power of good over evil. Charming to the last. Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Gershon, and this week we are celebrating the legacy of this guy right here, Mr. Peter Cushing, absolute horror icon and legend, who just had his birthday recently, and I thought now would be a good time to count down the top 10 Peter Cushing roles of all time. Yes, Peter Cushing is one of my absolute favorite actors of all time, especially in the horror genre. So let's get into it, as I like to usually do, with a couple honorable mentions. First one's going to be Dr. Terror Shrek. Not that Shrek. From Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. Yes, from Amicus Films. Yeah, Peter Cushing was in a lot of horror anthology films, and Dr. Terror was a fun, kind of quirky character who meets up with these guys on the train, one of them being Christopher Lee and then Donald Sutherland. And he proceeds to bust out these tarot cards, and that kind of, sets up the stories, by telling their futures. And it's such a fun film. Next up would be Dr. Frankenstein, of course, in Frankenstein Created Woman, which is my favorite sequel in the Frankenstein franchise from Hammer Films. Oh, man. And, as I've said many times before, I feel that Peter Cushing was the best to ever play the character of Dr. Frankenstein, and, I love this film. I think it's such a fun film, and I thought it was such a cool kind of twist on the concept, and it was kind of like Hammer's Bride of Frankenstein in a way. Yeah, absolutely love it. Also, Professor Christopher Lundgren from The Beast Must Die. I have a soft spot in my heart for that film. It's one of the first films I ever saw with Peter Cushing outside of Star Wars. Yeah, even before I got into all the Hammer stuff. And I just think it's such a fun film, and he's such a fun, kind of quirky character caught up in this murder mystery. With the werewolf involved, of course. Such a fun film, so definitely check out The Beast Must Die. Okay, let's get to it. In at number 10 is going to be John Banning in The Mummy. Yes. I actually prefer Hammer's version of The Mummy as opposed to the Universal classic. I just think it's a lot more fun, a lot more action. And Peter Cushing plays John Banning, who his father is the one that was at the tomb and read from the scroll of life and unwittingly released the monster Karis upon the world. And John Banning is an archaeologist that's kind of left to pick up the pieces, and does battle with the monster, who's played by Christopher Lee in this movie. In at number 9 is going to be Peter Cushing as Sherlock Holmes. Yes, and an excellent adaptation, The Hound of Baskervilles. Yeah, also from Hammer Films. I thought this was such a really good adaptation. I love the murder mystery of it. And Peter Cushing just kills it as Sherlock Holmes. He gives Basil Rathbone a run for his money. And he's just a perfect guy to play that character, And yeah, great film. In at number 8 is going to be Philip Grayson in The House That Dripped Blood, another anthology film, and this is from Amicus as well. Love this film. He plays Philip Grayson in the segment called Waxworks, where he moves into the house, the so-called house that dripped blood, and he's kind of this lonely guy who just for kicks goes down to the local wax museum of horrors, and he sees this wax figure that looks strangely like a woman he used to date, and then his friend also goes to the museum, and it turns out he knew the same woman, and they kind of find out that they both dated the same woman, and that woman happens to be the wife of the owner of the wax museum, and he doesn't take too kindly to these women doting on his wife, and things go horribly wrong. And in at number 7 is going to be Arthur Grimsdale from Tales from the Crypt. Yes, the original Tales from the Crypt movie based on the EC Comics. And and this is also from Amicus Films. So yeah, they did a lot of horror anthologies, and this is my favorite one from Amicus. I love this movie, and Peter Cushing has a great role in it. He plays the old man that lives across the street, and these guys, his neighbors, don't like him. They just think he's kind of this creepy old man who's kind of ruining the town, and he's just a lonely old man with his dogs, and and he likes to have fun with the children, he's absolutely harmless, but these guys just put out a smear campaign on him, then trying to ruin his life. They get him fired, he get his dogs taken away from him, and he ends up killing himself. But of course he comes back for revenge as a zombie, yes. Awesome stuff. Next one would be as Dr. Wells in Horror Express. Dr. Wells is a rival colleague of Alexander Saxton, who's played by Christopher Lee in the film. And Alexander Saxton discovers the corpse in the, this frozen man in ice, and he turns out to be this kind of extraterrestrial being, and takes possession of this old caveman, and then he switches bodies, and it ends up being just like the Thing, from another world, and it's based on the same story, I believe. But yeah, Peter Cushing is fantastic in this film, as he always is. And definitely one of my absolute favorites is Gustav Whale in Twins of Evil. God has sent me twins of evil. Oh man, he's quite a character in this film. He's like, he's the uncle of the twins of evil, even though really only one of them is evil. The other one is a good girl, but he doesn't see it that way. He just thinks they're these evil witches, basically. Because he is the leader of this group called the Brotherhood, and they're basically witch hunters during, like, the Salem witch trials era. But, he kind of turns out to be right, because there is a vampire that lives in town, and he has corrupted one of the girls. And he sets sights to take them all down and destroy all the vampires. And such a fun film, and he just chews the scenery in this movie like you wouldn't believe. Next up, of course, we have Dr. Van Helsing in The Brides of Dracula. Peter Cushing just absolutely kills it in this role, kills it in this movie. He carries this movie. He's just a badass, and I love him. Absolutely one of his finest performances, especially in the role of Van Helsing. Once again, I think Peter Cushing is the greatest actor to ever play the role of Van Helsing. Of course, that's just my opinion. And you knew it was coming, obviously. Grand Moff Tarkin in the original Star Wars film, which is called A New Hope nowadays. But yes, 1977, the original classic. And he plays Grand Moff Tarkin, who is actually the boss of Darth Vader. How about that? How cool is that? Which is cool because he got to work with David Prowse in Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell, so it was cool to see them working together again in this awesome film that's just legendary. And that's certainly his most famous role, and man, chock full of amazing one-liners, you know. You don't know how hard it was giving the order to terminate your life. You want another target? A military target? Then name the system. I grow tired of asking, so to be the last time. Where is your secret rebel base? Oh man. Awesome, awesome stuff. And in at number 2, it's going to be The Baron Victor Frankenstein and The Curse of Frankenstein. Phenomenal movie. One of the best adaptions of the Frankenstein story, and the best performance, in my opinion, of Dr. Victor Frankenstein. And the difference between the Hammer films of the Frankenstein series is it's all about Dr. Frankenstein. It's not really about the monster as much. It's all about him and his crazy experiments and his insanity and his complete dedication to science to the point where he's committing evil deeds, you know. Definitely has a huge influence on the character of Herbert West in Reanimator, I would certainly think so. But yeah, I just love it. He's amazing in this film. And, of course, in at number 1 is going to be, once again, Professor Van Helsing in Horror of Dracula, my favorite version of the Dracula story from Hammer Films. And man, he's just absolutely phenomenal. He is absolutely perfect in the role of Van Helsing. I love everything about it. He's just like my hero in this movie. He's just a badass. He knows everything about fighting vampires. He's a genius. And he's just an incredible actor, and it's fully on display in this film, Horror of Dracula from 1958. Alright guys, that's my list for the top 10 roles of Sir Peter Cushing, and thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Urshan, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared. Good evening, folks, and we got some brand new merchandise for you over at www.thehorrorcona.com, and that's C-O-N-A.com. Representing the Horror Corner. Great new design. We got the Morbid Hour live stream there, you got the Horror Hangout live stream there, and you got my nemesis, the Dark Fate. So grab your t-shirt over at www.thehorrorcona.com. And we also got this beautiful new mug. Look at that. Very, very cool. Thought that came out really nice. So grab your merchandise today over at www.thehorrorcona.com. Folks, don't forget to grab your Sean Patrick Urshan gear and represent the Horror Corner. Also, check out these awesome mugs we have. Perfect for your coffee. And definitely check out the Horror Hangout live stream t-shirt and represent the legacy of the Horror Hangout. Check out the link in the description below this video.